Okay, so we are going to start by taking a look at this Destiny versus Piers Morgan. A little debate that this YouTuber that lots of people know. I've recently discovered who this guy is.
He's a beta.
Betas.
Now we'll take a look at a bit of this debate on Piers Morgan. Piers seemed to be, you know, Piers has definitely got a little bit more of a conservative attitude towards the world these days, I think.
Definitely a moderate.
Yeah, and this interview was quite interesting to watch. The girl, I don't know her name, but she was obviously, as they say, very based in her opinion. But we'll hear Destiny. And here's the thing about Destiny. He's actually extremely intelligent. Listening to his opinions, I mean, he clearly does his research. There's no question. I mean, he does his research. He knows a lot of, politics and policy and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I still feel like he is either unaware of what's really going on. He's never heard of the World Economic Forum. He's never heard of corporate, takeover of government, which is clearly what's going on in our society around the world. We'll have a look here and see.
Okay, Destiny, you voted for Joe Biden last time. I think it's safe to assume you won't be voting for Donald Trump this time, but are you comfortable voting for Biden given the state that he now appears to be in?
Every time somebody attacks Biden on his senility, I feel like that is a stronger indictment of Trump's own failure as a president. I do agree that Biden definitely seems to have slowed down in his older age, but I mean, he passed so much more legislation than Trump. I think our foreign policy aims are better than they were under.
The fact that this guy thinks for a second that Biden is doing any of that. How can he for a moment believe that Biden is doing any of that? That's who has contacted him and asked him to make Biden and the Democratic Party sound competent. I think personally, Destiny's built his career up on his own, his own merits. But I don't think it would be very complicated for the Democratic Party to reach out and see his influence and asking him to do them favors. He's too smart to genuinely believe that Biden is doing this. He's too smart. I've watched debates with this guy. He knows what he's talking about. But again, maybe I'm not watching closely enough because maybe he is just a big fan of Biden. But let's keep watching here.
Trump, and I think the way that he manages the rhetoric and the overall attitude of the country is way more responsible than Trump as well. And he's not facing 90+ criminal indictments. So
that may well be true, but the reality is perception is often half the battle with an election campaign. The perception is that Donald Trump is a little bit younger, but has twice the energy, twice the dynamism, and all the stuff that's being thrown at him, far from defeating him, as is usually the case with politicians, has empowered him and made him stronger. What are the Democrats going to do about that come November?
I think all Democrats can kind of hope for is that the perception of the economy continues to increase. Consumer sentiment is starting to climb again. I think that Trump is also stumbling into a few misspeaks on his own. I think there was that clip of him mixing up Nikki Haley and Pelosi. There was him talking about, I think it was the deserts of Vietnam. Both of these guys are definitely, I'd say, hitting their older age, their golden years. So I don't know if Trump is going to be free of any of the misspeaks that Biden has found himself stumbling into recently as well.
To compare Biden's presence on stage to Trump's presence on stage, I mean, you have to be, coherent to be able to crack jokes the way Trump does.
Trump has the presence of an actual comedian.
Well, he's got the presence of an entertainer, and an entertainer has to be competent. An entertainer has to be present on stage to be able to determine whether or not they're hitting or missing with their jokes. And when you're comparing Donald Trump and Biden, there's just no comparing their mental competence. Like, there just isn't. We did a video last week of Biden getting ice cream with Seth Meyers. I mean, he literally looks like a child. So the reason why I'm doing this video and why I'm bringing up Destiny is because Destiny has a lot of influence online. He's got a lot of influence with the younger generation. He just appeals to the left big time. And I mean, I don't know what his follower count on YouTube is. If you could look that up for me. Yeah, see, he's only got 772,000 subscribers on YouTube, which, is a lot. He still gets millions and millions and millions of views. But I'd be very curious to watch how he grows over the course of this year. If he starts to get a lot of extra, support and followers, and gets invited to a lot of left-wing political, then you got to wonder who got into his inbox.
You see, Tommy, the interesting thing with me about Trump, I've known him a long time. I look at him, warts and all, good, bad, ugly. There's plenty of all of that with Trump. But his supporters love him. And one of the reasons I think that he's so popular with so many Americans is because he makes them laugh. And I watched that speech the other day. He was very funny. Not always, and some of it, as always with Trump, some of the hyperbolic rhetoric was a bit alarming. But actually, he was an entertainer, entertaining the crowd. That's why they like him. That's why they vote for him.
They like him because he has charisma. I like him because he has charisma. I also like him because when Donald Trump was my president, the economy was doing well. We ended endless wars. We started no new wars. There was relatively peace around the world with Donald Trump at the helm of the United States of America.
I got to say, I've said this a few times, where society peaked. It feels like we peaked in 2016, 2017, 18, that area. And, everything just seemed to be going great. Even myself, somebody who's always been a conspiracy theorist and who's been researching history of all the deep conspiracies, even myself got lulled into a state of sort of sheep-like mentality at that point in history because things had just kind of been going so well. I was making great money, business was good. My friends were all doing well up here in Canada. The housing market was making everybody feel like they were becoming millionaires. And then we all got the rug pulled out from under us. She just makes so much sense. So let's have another listen to her.
People didn't like what he tweeted. People didn't like the way that he spoke. Maybe they didn't like the way that he dressed or the way that his hairstyle was or his fake tan. But none of that mattered because the United States was doing well. Our border was secure. The world was a better place with Donald Trump at the helm. And when Democrats talk about Joe Biden and they say, he's slipping a little bit, my goodness, we know that they are obviously gaslighting us because we can clearly see that Joe Biden is not just slipping. He was slipping in 2020. He has slipped all the way now that we're in 2024. And it's not just little misspeaks here and there. Everybody has misspeaks. They mix people up. For Joe Biden, you have a special counsel report that quite plainly says we can't go after this man for his classified documents because he's a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. That says it all right there. Maybe we can indict him.
I don't even know what Destiny can do to come back from this. I can't remember what he says. So I'm going to flash forward and
96 times. We can't.
I mean, Destiny, I know your view of Trump, but it's hard to argue with all of what Tommy just said, isn't it? I mean, the Democrats seem to me to be sleepwalking in to a complete disaster if they're not careful. Biden does look, from here across the pond anyway, like someone who can barely string a sentence together or stay on his own 2 feet. How would anyone vote for someone given they have to do 4 years more from November as President of the United States, the toughest job in the world?
I mean, it depends on what you're pushing for. I mean, if you want to elect a comedian because he's got good charisma, then I agree that Trump definitely has better stage presence than Biden does. I think if you're a Democrat, you want to support Biden. You just have to try to stick in the realm of fact. Republicans inhabit a totally separate world right now. I just heard Tommy Lawrence say that we're doing better on the foreign policy front because Trump was better for being in endless wars. I mean, he bombed Syria. He abandoned Kurdish allies. He kicked the can down the road in Afghanistan. He hid Yemen drone strikes from us. He was still part of the Saudi-led coalition to bomb Yemen. He didn't do anything about Russia's takeover of Crimea. I mean, like, the idea that Trump was better on any of these areas of foreign policy is ridiculous. The idea that he was better domestically when he completely mishandled
Obama, by the way.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, he knows his stuff. Like, he does know his stuff. And all that stuff is true. That's all true. But at the same time, you got to wonder if both sides are, just all working towards the same goal.
Two wings of the same bird.
Yeah. And, if that were the case, I could appreciate him pointing that out. But he doesn't point that out. He sort of stays partisan and leans into the left trying to defend and whereas I would much more appreciate his debate and his points if he were actually pointing out the fact that perhaps Trump is just another pawn who's doing the bidding of these banks and doing the bidding of these corporations, and maybe perhaps he's been blackmailed by, old Epstein information. Who knows? But Destiny here isn't wrong. That being said, things only got worse when Biden got into office. Everything just fell apart. So he doesn't really have any legs to truly stand on. He just got dumped by his wife, apparently, who he was in an ethically non-monogamous relationship with, and trying to promote that throughout our society, which, to each their own. If you can functionally have a relationship where you sleep around with other people, then, good on you. I just don't see it working. I don't see the data supporting that stuff works. I wish you all the best if you do that. And I just know that that's going to get complicated. And obviously it got complicated for old Destiny. He got abandoned by his wife. And
Big surprise.
Big surprise. And it seems to be happening more and more and more with more people that I see. It doesn't take long for a woman to, when she's having sex with other men, to start finding that, oh yeah, maybe the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm with a beta male. I just had sex with a real man, and now all of a sudden I want out of my relationship.